Hi everyone, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads, and in this Better Beader episode, we are going to go over how to shorten jewelry. So last week I went over how to lengthen it, add extra length to bracelets, necklaces, etc. by adding on some extra beads, sewing on an additional button with jump rings. Now we're going to tackle what happens if it's too big and you need to make it a little bit smaller. So I'm starting out with a lovely bracelet that was actually made for us by Puga, and this is called the Haley bracelet. We'll also have a free download for the pattern online if you're interested. And it came, but when I put it on, it drowns my wrist. It is lovely. I would love to wear it, especially this time of year, but it is huge. So how do we solve that issue? The nice thing about a clasp that already has a jump ring attached is that you can easily remove the clasp. Now, I don't want to have to take the bracelet apart or anything. It was made as a gift for us, but I want to be able to wear it. So what you're going to do is, if you have a clasp that's already on a project that does have a nice removable end, you can remove the jump ring. This one has a magnet, so it's going to stick to my tools. But we're going to remove this jump ring here, opening it up, sliding it out of that 8mm bead, and then reevaluating where I can reattach it to. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind is that if you remove one end, you may want to remove the second end as well. Many bracelets, you could have it so that it goes over top of one another, almost like a belt, that you have one section going over top of another. We'll come to that in another section where we do a button. But I'm going to look further back in the design where I can place another piece of the jump ring. Link onto there. I'm going to take the magnet off for a second so it doesn't drive me crazy. But look back on the piece and see if there's an opportunity somewhere in order to attach onto another piece of thread. Moving that jump ring back, putting that clasp on there, and then closing up the jump ring. And I'm going to hold it there, close that up. You might need 2 sets of pliers with the magnet. Once it's closed up there, I can go in now, wear this lovely bracelet, and you can see it just tucks right inside of itself and has a much better, nicer fit. You can also, if you're not sure of the size, you can put this on the bottom of the piece and have it overlap to the top. So that is one way to shorten a bracelet or a necklace, is if you already have that jump ring on, whether or not you have a lobster clasp, a magnetic clasp, you can just attach it somewhere else on the piece so that way the piece can go over top of itself. The next bracelet that I'm featuring is the crush bracelet. So same deal, if you have anything peyote, if you have a bracelet that overlaps, even for a necklace if you want to. There's 2 options when it comes to a button clasp or closure. You can either make another loop. So in last week's Better Beader episode, we went over creating a second loop at the end of the other to make an extender chain. Just like I'm going to do with a button by attaching another button further into the project, you could do the same thing with the loop. If you know that it's going to be a size that you always want to keep, you can take this loop that is already here, sew it down to the back of the design, and just literally sew it down back there. Or take your thread burner, burn right here at the edge, pull the beads off, and then tie the knot there, and make another loop further back in the design. Just like we did with the Haley bracelet, same deal, that loop would be further along the design and the bracelet just overlaps itself. Another option is to do a second button. So the button can either go over or under. Again, it's up to you. So I can tuck the button underneath the design so the other button looks like a loop clasp, or I can have it so it goes over top of the button. I'm going to tuck a new button on the underside of the piece. So what I'm going to do is take a new cup button, new piece of thread and needle, and again, if it's a peyote piece bracelet, an easy stitch, you can also do this as well. I'm going to go through the design, going through here, and you have to know a little bit what the design is and kind of where your thread pass went. I'm going to add a couple extra beads, add my button, and this is again kind of on the underside, adding 3 beads, coming back down my button. Now I would reinforce this a couple times, but for the sake of the Better Beader episode, I'm just going to show you and tie off a knot. Coming down the project on the other side then, coming out the back side here, all I'm gonna do is tie these two thread ends together, adding again a second button. And this works again really, really well if you have a flat design like a peyote piece. If you need to shorten it up, you can easily do so by again tucking it underneath. So here I have a button. Here's kind of the front side right there. Here's the back side. I've created another button on the underside. When you put the bracelet on now, you're gonna tie on to that button on the underside, and this other one kind of looks then like a little bit of a charm. If you want to, you can also do a second loop, almost like a double button closure, where you have the second loop go right over top of the first. If you know for sure you're gonna keep it at this length, what I would do is add a little charm there so it looks like that extra extended piece is meant to be. You can also keep that button to the top and then hide the extra button underneath the piece as you're wearing it, and you have that option for bigger or smaller as well. So that's one other way to go in and to shorten your bracelets. You can also do the same thing for necklaces as well if you do need to shorten those pieces. Again, making a second loop further back in the design rather than extending off the end. Make another loop back here for your necklace and you'll be able to wear it at different lengths as well. Our next piece that we're going to talk about, we're going to use the square stitch chain as an example. So if you have a piece, and this one's a necklace, or it can be a wrap bracelet, when I put it on, if it just hangs not at the right spot, where I feel like it needs to be a little bit higher or it needs to be a little bit lower, or as I'm wearing it as a wrap bracelet, I need it to be a little bit different size. What I can do is, just like the button option, where we can make a new loop or further back, or we can add a second button, we can do the same thing if you have a toggle clasp. So this one features a toggle clasp, and there's two options for this. Make another toggle loop and have it back there, or what I prefer, because of the way that this piece looks and it has a little bit of a charm, I'm actually going to attach another toggle bar further up the piece. Now for this to work, you need to make sure that your beads will fit through the toggle. So you can see mine have to stop kind of right at that. I could actually push that through if I need to, but I'm going to attach my second toggle bar right there an inch down. And then it's going to hold on to the project. So just like we did with the button, I'm going to take my new toggle bar, take a new piece of thread and needle. If I want to, I could also use a jump ring. Just know as you're adding the jump ring and you're going through some of these threads that you want to make sure that that stays nice and tight. So here, same deal, I'm gonna go up through the piece, come on out, right there. And as I come out right there, I'm gonna add, my wire guard or just a bead or two, doesn't really matter. And then as I come down the piece here, I'm gonna go, my bead stayed, my toggle went and my bead stayed. Same deal here, I'm gonna go after my toggle, push that bead to the other side. It wants to cooperate, there we go. Go back through my beads, at least one of them, add one more bead down to the other side. And again, I would go in and I would secure these with more passes of thread through them. Have that little extra toggle bar be there. Just shorten it up. Now what I'm going to do is tie this off. And if you do have bigger beads that won't fit through the toggle loop, then go ahead and add another toggle loop. You can also, if you hate this or if you don't like it, you can on a simple project like this, just burn off the end and take a couple rows off. So now I have two of my loops on. This first one's going to look like a little bit of a chain. So as you put your piece on, you're going through with one toggle bar. You're going through with the second toggle bar, and then that second toggle bar, as I go through, will hold the piece at that length. So again, it just adds to a little bit of that charm. You don't really even see it. It kind of hangs out there, and the second toggle bar will hold it. Likewise, if you want to and you have the bigger piece, you can do another toggle bar at the top that you can also attach to. So there's two options when it comes to how to attach and shorten something that has a toggle. The hardest type of clasp is going to be a multi-strand clasp or a push clasp. There's no super simple, really great solution unless you want to buy a whole nother clasp, because most of the time you need that tongue to fit in. Now, what you can do is, this is my best advice, especially if you have a component piece like this here, where you know that each individual little piece is kind of a component and then it's square stitched together, is going to be to burn off the end of the thread here. Once you burn off the end of the thread here, you're going to reattach. You can keep this last piece on if you want, or simply slide that last piece bead by bead. I know it's a little tedious, but you'll want to be able to wear it bead by bead off. You'll have an extra thread then to reattach this tongue to fit into the nice clasp. This is the Pandora bracelet, Pandora's box bracelet. And what I would recommend as you're working on this, again, burn right at the clasp right there. So you see right where you have the thread there at the clasp, burn that, take off the last couple rows of beads to remove one of the pieces. If you happen to have an extra tongue, you can take the extra tongue just like a button, just like we did with the magnet, and actually reattach it through another series of beads here to the next row back. This one then just kind of hangs out there, or it gets, again, tucked underneath as you're going in to wear it. You can also kind of have it just be to the side if you want. That way that one hangs down as a little bit of a charm, but you still have the tongue there. You can also use this as a little charm, that piece at another clasp, again, further up to here on an angle if you want, and then this really does hang down as a charm. But overall, if you do have something with a push clasp, a lovely piece like this Pandora's box, you're going to find the best results to actually do a little burning and then shortening up on that way. Again, if you have pieces that you're unsure of the length and you want to make it, maybe you want to use a lobster and an extender clasp so you don't have to do that. And you can have these different ways of basically reattaching a second set of the clasp, or even moving the clasp further along the design to make things large, or to make things smaller as you're working with them. So these ideas really are made to be helpful if you already have the finished jewelry and you need to make it a little bit smaller. If you already have a bangle bracelet on that you need to make smaller, the best option is to actually go in and kind of seam a little stitch in there, add some bigger beads to the interior. So think about like a ring where sometimes they add a little weighted ball. You can take an actual piece that is a full circle, and you can sew larger beads into the bottom, so when you put it on, you actually have those bigger beads that work to shorten the piece as you're working with it. So if you have a piece that is, you know, a bangle, it's already closed up like this, go ahead and take some bigger beads and sew them into the interior so those bigger beads sit along your wrist and they can work to shorten the piece. So that's an option too for a bracelet like something like the Pandora's bracelet. If you need it to be a little bit smaller, you can go into the back side here, the underside, and sew, say, an 8mm bead across the back. So that way when you close it, if you have those 8mm beads, those are gonna sit closer to your wrist. The bracelet will push out a little bit more, but that way you don't have to completely take it apart. Again, these are options to do if you already have a piece completed, you inherited some jewelry, you need to make it smaller. If you missed last week's episode, you want to make things bigger, make sure to check out last week's Better Beader episode. Additionally, if you don't mind, take some time, give a little thumbs up, and comment below. Comment and say your best tips, techniques, and ways to shorten, or go back to that other video to lengthen, different pieces of jewelry and some helpful hints that you have tried. I also didn't touch on earrings, but if you do want to shorten earrings, the easiest way always is to take off that ear wire if you have it, attach it to a post so it sits higher up. Whether or not that's just a little ball post with a little loop, that's going to be your easiest way to shorten up a pair of earrings. So you can shorten up designs, you can lengthen designs, you can remake them and refound them into your creations. As always, these Better Beader episodes are made to hopefully help you become a little bit of a better beater, give you some ideas, some solutions, some tips, and some tricks as well as you join in your beading challenges, like how to make things shorter or longer. As always, remember, if you haven't yet, subscribe so you get regular updates from us here at PotomacBeads. And if you want to check out any of the links to the lovely bracelets that were featured in today's video, check out the links below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully this episode helped to make you a better beater.